everyone is having a fantastic day today. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Olivia. Um, Something that I wanted to talk about today is me personally. One of the reasons why you need to cut someone off from your life and set boundaries is especially if people like they're suffering too much. Because my thing is, if you can't afford it, don't buy it. If you know it's going to cause problems, don't get yourself involved in it. But I feel like sometimes people like getting themselves involved in situations and they want someone or they need someone to get them out of those situations and to help them, but potentially will get mad at you for not helping them the way that they wanted you to or not removing the situation and the problem overall. Simply, people will make a bed and they want you to sleep in it, or something to the effect that people will make a bed and simply just they themselves do not want to sleep in it. And my mentality is you have to be careful because your thoughts become your words become actions, your actions become habits, your habits become your character, and your character will define your destiny, will define your future. That's like a famous quote or something. But just trying to convince miserable people who always focus on the negative that you constantly talking about your suffering, constantly talking about negativity and your pain, it does nothing but further attract and manifest that pain and that suffering in your life. Because when you complain about it 24/7, it's all that you can think about, it's all that's on your mind. So even subconsciously, you're always looking for the negative things in life. Whether even if it's a positive situation, you're always thinking negatively. And this too, I've come to realize that honestly, some people like their problems. They like listening to sad music and that emotion that they get from it. They like listening or, excuse me, watching sad movies, listening to sad stories because they like, I don't know, I feel like they like the sadness that they get from it. Like I said, some people like their pain, they like their trauma. That is not a good thing, but it happens. So my thing is you always have to think positive. You're going to have to reroute that subconscious mind because your subconscious mind, if you're always thinking negative, like I said, subconsciously you will always be looking for something negative. And negativity is in a large supply, especially if you go out looking for it. So, what I'm trying to say is you got to stay away from people that still. And you may be like, what do you mean by that? You got to stay away from people who still complain, who are still hating, who are still finding problems with every little thing, who are still negative, who are stagnant, who are still stagnant, no progress, no growth in life, who just no improvement whatsoever. Because do you not realize that a self destructive mindset makes self destructive people? And if you yourself are trying to build a strong foundation, you like who you are, you like your life, whether life throws your curveball at you or not, you want to be something in life, you have a purpose, you want to do something positive. Being around people with a self destructive mindset, which in turn, self destructive mindset turns into self destructive people, I feel like that eats away at the goals that you have. That eats away at your positivity. And even this too, for a lot of people, you're just going to have to simply let them suffer. You cannot save people from people who do not want to save themselves. From people who make a bed, but they themselves don't want to sleep in it. They want you to sleep in it. Sometimes you're going to have to let people suffer the consequences. You cannot, a lot of the times, you cannot rob people of their struggle because sometimes that pain builds character. Sometimes that pain may build purpose. Like I said, some people made the bed and they're just going to have to sleep in it in order for them to learn from those experiences. Because I feel like once is a mistake, twice is a pattern that you're always, complaining, manifesting your suffering, always talking about the negative, always hating. You have to realize when you do it 3 times over, one, two, three, I feel like that you start becoming compliant. you start submitting to the negativity. You start submitting to the thoughts that you have in your head that are not positive. The thoughts that you think, the first thing that you think about is the worst thing. Your first thought isn't even positive, it's negative. So, for a lot of people, you cannot interrupt their life lesson. You cannot suffer for them for their decisions. Sometimes people are just gonna have to make the bed. They made the bed, they're gonna have to sleep in it. And what I mean by like self-destructive people who manifest their suffering or who wind up destructing, excuse me, destroying themselves, especially when you have one is when you have a self-defeating mindset. I hope my sound's up. Hold on. Yeah, it's up. When you have a self-defeating mindset, I feel like that is when you have a pattern of always thinking negative. You have extreme pessimism. You're extremely pessimistic. Every time something good happens to someone or just something happens, you're always thinking negative. This perfectionism too is a self-defeating mindset because there is no perfect person walking around here on this earth. So you are having expectations, having standards that you will not be able to reach because you're expecting perfectionism. Excuse me, you're expecting perfection, perfect, when you're not perfect. When there is no perfect person walking around here on this earth. Even self-criticism too is a self-defeating mindset. All those things, you start sabotaging your own goals. You start sabotaging your own future, your thoughts, your habits, your actions, your future, what you want to do in your life, your well-being, your mental and emotional state. And I feel like because of that, like I said, once you start to have a self-destructive mind, you become a self-destructive person. And if people around you with that mentality, what's going to happen to them? They're going to be just like you. Because usually, what is it? Not a bad apple spoils rotten fruit. Usually, it's not the good apple that turns all the bad apples good. It's the bad apples going to turn all the good apples bad. And I feel like even with people with this mindset, they are always using the excuse of, oh, I'll never succeed, or this was never meant to happen to me. It's always a never. It's always very just to the point, just hard, negative, never, just always using that in statements. And also, I feel like another mindset that is very destructive that allows you to manifest your suffering is bottling up your emotions too. Suppressing your emotions is not beneficial for you. Suppressing your emotions for an image, maybe your image, someone else's image, for politeness because you want to seem nice, because nice is very close to people pleasing. Suppressing your emotions is seen as strength, but and yet you're stressing yourself out. You got anxiety. You have health issues, all from bottling in these emotions. And I feel like, or just having a situation where you got to like bend and you're holding it all in, but you can still keep a smile on your face. I don't, I, You have to be careful with that because then when you always hold those emotions in, they're going to explode at some point, especially the negative ones. Well, it's good to have someone to talk to about the emotions that you're feeling, a range of emotions, but always talking about negativity, always being negative, that's the first thing that come out your mouth and all that you talk about, that just shows where your mindset is, and then that further shows who you are as a person. If you're thinking negative, you're going to be negative, you overall. So I think it's just very important not to be that way. Also, another self-destructive mindset is when you procrastinate too, always avoiding. Well, I'll do it tomorrow, or I'll do it next week. You're always avoiding whatever it is you want to accomplish in life because of these quote unquote negative consequences, or really it's fear of maybe not succeeding, fear of embarrassment, fear of looking crazy, fear of people talking about you, all those things. And also, I feel like another self-destructive mindset is, if you think that you're not good at it, people have this mentality of, if I think I'm not good at this, okay, maybe it's art. If I'm not good at drawing, I don't even have the willpower to even learn because I'm already deciding that I'm not good at it. And I feel like it can be used as an excuse that you tell to yourself. It's like when you tell yourself you're incapable of something, tell yourself you're bad at a task, bad at something, whatever it is. People will say that even sometimes to even avoid doing it, or just avoid doing it or trying. Just outright saying I'm terrible at it when you may not have even tried it yet. And I don't know if it's used to, I feel like it's used to potentially self soothe. Like I said, maybe from embarrassment, maybe fear, looking crazy, maybe to not take on the responsibility. You don't want to take on the load. I just feel like another reason why it is very important that you need to do is when sacrificing yourself too much to people. When you are always giving, 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 and you leave nothing for yourself in return, that wears on your mental, your emotional, your physical state. You will be burned out. You'll have resentment. You'll lose yourself overall personally. And I feel like it's like you pouring from an empty cup. And a lot of the times you giving out everybody else something, you pouring into everybody else's cup, and then when your cup is empty, those people that you were pouring yourself out, you're pouring from your cup into their cup, they may not give anything to you in return. Who's refilling you? And I think it's just very important to be aware of particular mindsets. It's very important to be aware if you use vices too. If you use something to escape from reality, you live a very short lived, fake, artificial escape. But yet, when you're alone, or when that high wears off, or you're by yourself and all those people are gone, those voices and those thoughts come back to you, and then regret occurs, reality sinks in. I don't know. I think it's just very important to be aware of these self destructive mindsets and these things that can cause you to start just potentially being negative overall. Because if you think negative, you're going to be negative, and life is going to be negative for you. And back to what I was saying, I feel like, unfortunately, I think some people like pain, the pain that they go through, suffering, because unfortunately, and it's very sad, it gives them like a sense of purpose. Because you have gone through so much pain, so much trauma, so many negative things in life, you feel like life overall is going to be negative for you. And that whatever life throws at you, I feel like you get so used to the pain that you think that's all that you are. Is when they say your name, they just automatically think the most negative things, or because life throws constant curveballs at you, you feel like all I am is just my pain and my suffering. And that's not true, but we have a lot of people that think like that. And because of that, because people get so used to their suffering, get so used to thinking that's all that they are, a lot of people cannot talk about anything other than their suffering or negativity going on in their life, and can't be positive. And like I said, when you are constantly talking about negative things in your life, your suffering, your pain, I feel like because of that, you wind up attracting more suffering and pain because you're always talking about it. It's always going to be on your mind, and it's always something that your subconscious is always going to be looking for, because you start becoming what you attract. And like I said, especially if you think all you think about is negativity, negative things. And I just I feel like you can express your suffering and your pain to some safe space, someone that you trust, someone that you can expose those vulnerable sides to you, talk about that pain, that suffering, that trauma, that wound. I'm not saying that is not a bad thing. I'm just saying that a lot of people are going through something. Everybody is suffering and going through some sort of pain to some degree, because nobody's life is 100% perfect. Nobody's life is 100% positive, and that everything is just sunshine and rainbows. Life is going to be throwing you curveballs. And it may not be to the degree that you're going through. Not everybody has the same degree of pain, wounds, and trauma, but we are all suffering through something in life, all going through something. And I feel like when people continue to always think that like they're the only ones going through pain and suffering, you're the only one suffering, you're the only one going through something negative, you're the only one. I feel like pain, your pain doesn't make you unique. And the very moment that you think that your pain is unique, I feel like that's the moment where you start internalizing it more, you start protecting it rather than actually healing from it. And I'm just saying, if you want, everybody's going to go through something, but a lot of me personally, if I had to develop the mentality, even though I go through negative, there's even a positive even in the negative. And I'm just saying, there's a lot of people out there that like manifesting their suffering, whether they went through pain, whether they went through trauma, whether they just want to be negative overall. But if you personally make the decision that you want to be positive, you personally make the decision that you want to be accomplish something in life, you want to be more than your pain, more than your suffering, you know, the pain, turn that pain into purpose. You have to get away from people who always talk negative, from people whose first thought is always negativity, suffering, because it's going to become detrimental towards you and what you want to accomplish in life. Especially if you're trying to develop a more positive outlook on life, a positive thinking, you cannot surround yourself with people who constantly think negative, because eventually you will wind up thinking negative just like them and won't think a positive thought whatsoever. The first thing that comes to mind will always be negative. And their thinking will wind up becoming yours, and you'll start acting like that. And I'm just saying it's very important that you gotta set boundaries with people who like to manifest their suffering. Setting boundaries and not trying to do the work for people when they get themselves in situations like they made the bed, they want you to sleep in it. You know, that's not your responsibility to take up for every single time someone makes a mistake or a situation and you feel like you got to sleep in their bed, a bed that they made. Just becoming aware of those who are manifesting their suffering, becoming aware of those who are always complaining, who are still complaining, who are still hating, who are hating and continue to hate, being aware of that. I say awareness is always the first step. And then after awareness is action. You got to do something about it. But just being careful with people who manifest their suffering, because how they feel can wind up becoming how you feel about whatever you want to accomplish in life or just yourself overall. And it's just something that can be very self-destructive and damages you mentally and emotionally and just really sends you just downhill. And it's just something that you have to be aware of and be careful of, is that people that manifest their suffering. Because if that's not what you want out of your life, you don't want to manifest your suffering, you got to get away from people who do the exact same thing. You know, they are an example of how not to be. So now you know how to be. So, but that's all I wanted to talk about today. And I hope everyone has oh wow. Hope everyone has a fantastic day. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.